Okay, let's begin. Good morning, all. As I have taught one subject before, we all know each other and we don't need to introduce each other once again. So, we are not going to spend time on that one, and instead of that one, we'll begin with the curriculum directly. But before proceeding for the curriculum directly, I need you to go through one video that will help you to understand what exactly mean by manufacturing or what are the different aspects of the manufacturing that you will come to know. So that I'm going to play this video. It has got 10 minutes duration. Each one of you should look at each and every instance of the video, and if you find anything curious, we can discuss that one afterwards. So I'm going to play that video now. Let me know, because I'm sharing this one for the first time and I'm not sure whether there would be sound also. So if you find any difficulty, just let me know.
Do you ever wonder how amorphous lumps of material are turned into the everyday products which surround us? Let's find out. In this video, we're going to talk about manufacturing processes. There are 6 main categories of manufacturing processes, which are forming, casting, molding, joining, machining, and additive manufacturing. Each one of these categories contains a large number of different manufacturing techniques. There are a lot of different factors which need to be considered when selecting the right manufacturing process. This includes the material you are working with, the geometry of the object, the number of parts you are producing, tool and material costs, and required levels of automation, to name just a few. Let's look through each of the 6 categories in detail. Forming involves applying forces or pressure and plastically deforming the material to produce the desired shape. It is typically used for metals. Most forming processes can be done when the metal is either above or below its recrystallization temperature. This is known as hot or cold working. Hot working makes it easier to plastically deform the metal. But cold working causes strain hardening, which increases the strength of the material. 3 common forming processes are forging, rolling, and extrusion. Modern forging is done using machines. Enclosed die or impression forging. The metal is placed between top and bottom closed dies. Repeated strokes from the hammer are used to cause the metal to flow into the shape of the dies. Objects produced using forging can have improved mechanical properties compared to objects which are cast, but it can be difficult to achieve tight tolerances using forging, and the required equipment can be expensive. Extrusion is a continuous process which involves placing hot metal in a chamber and using a ram to force it through a die, producing a long object with a constant cross-section. Extrusion provides an excellent surface finish and can achieve very tight tolerances, but it is only suitable for producing 2-dimensional shapes. Rolling is probably the most commonly used forming process. It involves passing metal between 2 or more rollers, which apply pressure and reduce thickness. More complex products like I-beams can also be manufactured by rolling. Rolling can result in improved mechanical properties and can be automated, which makes it good for large-scale production, but tooling costs tend to be high and it can't be used to produce very complex shapes. Let's move on to the next category of manufacturing processes, casting. Casting involves pouring molten metal into a mold and allowing it to solidify. It is what we call a primary shaping process. A secondary process, such as machining, is typically needed to achieve the desired surface finish. Like forming, casting is most commonly used for metals. 3 common types of casting are die casting, sand casting, and investment casting. In die casting, molten metal is forced into reusable metal dies at high pressure. Once the molten metal has solidified, it is removed from the mold. Die casting is mostly used for non-ferrous metals like aluminum and zinc, which have low melting temperatures. It provides an excellent surface finish and can achieve very tight tolerances. But startup costs tend to be high, so it is only really suitable for large production runs. In sand casting, a pattern is used to create a single-use mold from damp sand. The sand is typically contained in two mold boxes, called the cope and the drag. Molten metal is poured into the mold through a channel formed in the sand. When the metal has solidified, the cast object can be removed from the sand. Sand casting can be used for a wide range of metals, including those with high melting temperatures. It can produce large and complex parts, and initial costs are very low, making it good for small production runs. However, it provides a poor surface finish and is not as accurate as other casting processes. The last casting process we will look at is investment casting. Several wax patterns of the same object are created and attached to a sprue. The wax tree is dipped into a slurry to create a ceramic mold. Heat is applied to melt out the wax. Molten metal is then poured into the ceramic mold. And once the casting has cooled, the mold is broken off. Investment casting is good for parts with complex geometry and can achieve tight tolerances, but it is an expensive and time-consuming process. Molding is very similar to casting. It involves shaping a liquid or pliable material using a mold. Most of the time, molding is used for forming plastics. Typical molding processes are injection molding, compression molding, and blow molding. Let's look at the first two. Injection molding is the most commonly used manufacturing method for plastics. Polymer granules are fed into the hopper, and a screw is used to pass the material through a heated cylinder before it is forced at pressure into the mold. Injection molding is mostly used for thermoplastics, which are polymers which soften when they are heated and harden when they are cooled. It is a very fast process and can be fully automated, meaning labor costs are low, but startup costs are very high due to the expensive molds, so it is really only cost-effective for large production runs. Compression molding involves placing a precise amount of material into a mold. The mold is closed and pressure and temperature are applied. Compression molding is mostly used for thermosets, which are polymers which irreversibly harden when heated. Tooling costs are relatively cheap, making it good for small production runs, but it is quite a slow process and is not well suited for complex designs. So far, we have only looked at material deformation processes. Machining is a material removal process, where a tool is used to remove material from a larger object. It is often used for secondary shaping, when the part has already been formed using a primary process like casting. Machining can be used for a wide range of materials, including metals, plastics, and wood. Examples of machining include drilling, turning, and reaming. Drilling is the cutting of a normal circular hole by pressing a rotating drill bit through a solid object. And turning is the use of a cutting tool to shape a rotating workpiece. Let's move on to the next category. Joining involves combining multiple separate components into a larger assembly. Like machining, joining is a secondary process. Welding, riveting, brazing, soldering, and fastening are all different types of joining processes. Welding uses extremely high heat to fuse distinct metal parts together. Unlike soldering and brazing, the base metal melts during welding. The final category is additive manufacturing, which involves adding material to build up the desired object, typically one layer at a time. 3D printing, selective laser sintering, and vat polymerization are examples of additive manufacturing techniques. For 3D printing, a computer is used to successfully build up an object layer by layer. 3D printing is a slow process, and the range of materials which can be used is limited. As a result, it tends to be used for prototyping rather than for mass production. That's it for this introduction to manufacturing processes.
Okay. So through that video, I tried to give an idea of most prominent manufacturing processes. There are many more out there, but in that video, they have taken some prominent manufacturing processes from the each category. First, they talked about 6 major categories, and out of those 6, they discussed 3-4 processes from individual category. Okay, so this is going to be like a scope of manufacturing. So now let's begin with the curriculum that we are supposed to discuss in the subject manufacturing processes 2. So we are going to begin with the examination scheme and all. As we know, this subject is supposed to have 3 credits, and for those 3 credits, the examination scheme is quite familiar one. The continuous assessment will be there for 20 marks, and for that one there will be 2 class tests, CT1, CT2 or CA1, CA2. That will be accounted for this 20 marks. Additionally, one mid-semester examination will be there, that will be having 20 marks, and end semester will be there for 60 marks. Usually there will be a theory examination, and from the last 2 semesters we are facing this corona situation, and we don't know whether it is going to be offline or online, but hopefully everything will be back on track very soon, and there will be offline examination. So we are going to consider there would be a written theory examination. Okay, so that is going to be of 60 marks. Duration will be 3 hours. Now, before proceeding to the curriculum, let me discuss the course outcomes. Now you have a better idea of the importance of these course outcomes, right? Why do we need to write and follow those course outcomes? Course outcomes are nothing but the statements that talks about what you are going to get at the end of this particular course. Means if you have studied this manufacturing processes 2 within the duration of these 3 months, at the end, what you will have with you, that will be explained in these 6 statements. Usually what we follow, 1 unit, we write 1 statement. So if you have studied that 1 unit, what you will get, that would be written through that statement. So here total 6 statements are there. I'll go through individual statement and I'll try to map that one with the curriculum as well. So the first statement is, Define the cutting tool geometry and its effect on the various machining performance parameters. So from the statements, you could easily get that this is something related to a single point cutting tool. Now, if you look at the curriculum, there are two units, unit number 2 and unit number 3. Those are based on the single point cutting tool or the operations that are being performed on lathe machines. So unit number 2 is going to based on this one. Unit number 1 is abrasive machining. So there might be a grinding, lapping, and some other machining processes where abrasives are used as a cutting tool. So that is the unit number 1. Unit number 2 and 3 is based on that single point cutting tool. Unit number 4 is processing of powder metals. So this is based on powder metallurgy. Then unit number 5 is going to deal with processing of ceramics and glasses. And last one is processing of plastic. So first CO is define the cutting tool geometry and effects on the various machining performance parameters. So that is going to deal with this unit number 2. So once you have studied this unit number 2, what you are supposed to do, you are supposed to get back to these COs, read this statement number 1, and if you are able to do this, then you can say that you have thoroughly studied this unit number 2. Because if you can do whatever written in the statement, it means that the purpose of studying this particular unit has been achieved. Similarly, CO2, this is also based on that single point cutting tool, but that is unit number 3, where we are going to study the temperature generation, tool wear, machinability, and cutting tool materials. That all the things that we are going to study in unit number 3, and this CO number 2 is going to deal with that one. The statement of CO is select cutting tool material for a specific application with reference to. Now, when you want to select any tool material, what parameters we need to take into account? What tool wear is there? What are the cutting forces generated? What is temperature generation is range is there? And according to or following all those parameters, we need to select any tool material for a particular application. So once you have studied that unit number 3, that you are going to study all those things, that thermal aspects, tool wear, cutting tool material, and how to control that temperature generation with the use of cutting fluids. And once you study all those things, you are supposed to satisfy the CO number 2. Then CO number 3, this is going to deal with the unit number 1, that is based on the abrasive machining. So statement is explain abrasive machining process and its parameters and grindability of the materials. In this abrasive machining processes unit, we are going to focus prominently on grinding. So grindability of material means how easily you can grind that material. That decides the grindability. If you can grind easily, we can say that material is grindable. If you can't do that, then that is not grindable. So that you can say once you have studied that unit number 1 through this CO3. CO4, this is going to deal with unit number 4, that is processing of powder metals or powder metallurgy. Also, it is also being called as powder metallurgy. So there, what we do, we take a metal or non-metal powders, we add some binding material, we shape and heat it to a final dimensions. So in that unit, we are going to study the various processes used, various process parameters and their properties. And once you have studied that unit, what you are supposed to do, identify the applications of powder metal processing using basic knowledge of powder metallurgy, because you have studied the powder metallurgy thoroughly, we know that where we can apply this powder metallurgy or metal powder processing, and if you can do that, the CO4 will be attained. Similarly, CO5, it is going to deal with the processing of ceramics and glass. Ceramic and glass processing, various methods we are going to discuss. The capabilities and limitations of individual process will also be discussed alongside. And once you have studied all those things, you are supposed to make this CO number 5. And last one, this is going to deal with the unit number 6, that is processing of plastics. Plastics, or we can call it in scientific term as a polymer. So compare various plastic processing methods. In that unit number 6, there are various methods that we are going to discuss for specific applications, like when you want to manufacture a tube, when you want to manufacture a plate or disc, when you want to manufacture that fiber, then what are the available processes? That all things we are going to discuss. So here it will be like comparing all those processes with each other, and if you can do that, it can be said that you have attained that CO number 6. This is mapping up CO with PO. This PO also you might have a well idea of that. PO stands for program outcomes. Just like course outcomes, when we say that course outcomes are the statements that explains what you are supposed to do once you have studied a particular course. Course means subject. Similarly, program means your BTech in mechanical engineering. So when you have studied that BTech mechanical engineering, what characteristics you are supposed to have, that has been written with the help of these 12 statements. Those 12 statements has been governed and controlled by National Board of Accreditation that looks after the quality throughout the engineering institutes. So you are supposed to have these 12 statements, and once you have studied any one subject, actually these 12 statements are going to focus on like engineering knowledge is there, whether you are capable to work in team, whether you are good at using modern tools, whether you can communicate your ideas with the person next to you, or when somebody comes to you with their problem, how easily you get what that person is trying to say, whether you have done something for society, what ethics you have, what work norms you follow. All these things or a few additional things are there, and those individual things are written with the help of this individual PO. So these 12 statements that you are supposed to attain at the end of program, means once you have completed BTech mechanical engineering. So it is but obvious that attaining these 12 statements will not be an overnight phenomenon. म्हणजे एक दिवस झोपलो आणि दुसऱ्या दिवशी तुम्हाला हे 12 कॅरेक्टरिस्टिक्स आल्या असं असणार आहे का? नाहीये. Once you admit to the first year of engineering, this journey starts. In first semester, you might attend PO1, PO2, PO5, PO9, PO11, whatever it is. And in semester 2, you might attend few remaining COs along with the one that you attend in the semester 1 itself. So when you study individual subject, some of these 12 statements will be attained, some, not all the statements. Once you study one subject like MP2, here you can see that these 5-6 POs are only attained, and that to various levels. This is level 1, this is level 2, this is level 3. So once you study one subject, out of these 12, few statements will be attained in certain proportion. And as you keep on studying, as you studying more and more subject, this proportion as well as attainment of individual CO keep on increasing, and once you have graduated, you will have all those 12 characteristics. Okay, and that mapping has been shown over here. How this MP2 is going to help to attain these 12 statements is denoted in this table. Okay, so let's begin with the curriculum now. There are 6 units. The first unit is based on abrasive machining and finishing operations. Or abrasive machining is prominently used for finishing operations only. Yes, some grinding operations are there that are used for a large stock removal, but usually abrasive machinings are used for finishing operations where material removal rate is quite low, but the desired surface finish is expected to be better. So such applications, we go for these abrasive machinings. So what we are going to discuss, introduction abrasives and bonded abrasives. We know that abrasive is a very small particle, and if you try to hold that individual particle and try to use that as a cutting tool to remove the material, that is not going to be serve the purpose. So what we need to do, we need to combine large number of abrasives together, shape into some grinding wheel, discs or similar tool, and then we can use that wheel or disc as a cutting tool. So that is called as bonded abrasive. That is nothing but the grinding wheel. Now when you try to combine those abrasives together to form a wheel, we need to use some material to hold those abrasives together. So the various bonding materials are there that we are going to discuss. Then once you have manufactured that grinding wheel, the wheel will be characterized with the help of grade, structure and all. Grade means whether it is hard wheel, soft wheel. Structure means whether it is dense or open. Dense or open in the sense the number of abrasives in that grinding wheel. If abrasives are very closely packed, large number of abrasives are there, then we can say structure is dense. When number of abrasives are less, structure will be open. Then we'll discuss the basic grinding process, grinding wear characteristics, grinding ratio, dressing and truing. Once that grinding wheel has got blunt or has got some wear and that we cannot use further for the machining, then we need to dress it or truing is there. Truing is having that true shape of that wheel again. That process is called as truing, and dressing in the sense whatever blunt edge is there on the wheel surface that would be removed to have the fresh cutting edges. That process is called as dressing. The next would be shaping of grinding wheels, how that grinding wheels are made, then grindability of material, how easily materials can be grind. That term is called as grindability that we'll be talking about. Then wheel selection for a process. When you want to machine a particular material or particular object, we need to go for wheel selection depending upon the shape and size of the object or material properties also we need to consider. Then grinding operation machines, we'll discuss that machines also, and then design consideration for grinding. When you want to have a grinding operation for particular application, what things we need to consider, that we'll discuss over here. And last one is the finishing operations. In addition to grinding, we'll quickly go through few finishing operation processes like lapping is there, honing is there, and few more are there. So we'll quickly go through those finishing processes as well. Unit number 2, as I said earlier, this is going to deal with the operations that are being performed on the lathe machine. So the operations are based on the single point cutting tool. So we'll start with the geometry of the cutting tool, then how chip forms, what are the nature of forces generated, how to measure those forces, the involvement of various forces like cutting energy, flowing force, then what is mean by size effect. This is quite interesting term. We'll look at that term while studying the unit. Then uh, mean shear strength of work material, that is related to property related to work material, then chip thickness, and there are two theories that governs the chip formation mechanism. Those theories are Ernst and Merchant theory, and second one is Lee Schaffer theory. We are going to discuss those theories, And last point is friction in metal cutting. That we'll talk about. Then unit number 3, this is like advanced version of the unit number 2. We'll study the thermal aspects, tool wear and machinability in unit number 3. So thermal aspects in the sense how temperature distribution would be there when you are using that single point cutting tool to remove the unwanted material from the workpiece. What are the reasons of temperature generation? What are the sources of temperature generation? How that temperature distribution would be there, like what amount of heat will be carried away by chip, what would be dissipated into cutting tool, and what amount would be dissipated into workpiece. All those things will be discussed in this thermal aspects. Then second one is tool wear. We know that if you want to have a desired shape in terms of accuracy, when you are converting that raw material into some desired product with the help of some cutting tool, we are going to have two motions for the cutting tool and one motion for the workpiece. Workpiece is going to have rotary motion and cutting tool will move in this direction as well as in this direction. And those two motions are going to decide the dimension of the object. Now, if I control only this motion and I simply ignore the tool wear, I won't be able to get the desired shape. Because if this cutting edge has got blunt, that means I'm supposed to move this cutting tool that much by additional distance. But if I am not following this tool wear, then tool will slightly be away from its actual position and these dimensions are going to be different than what are expected, right? So that way we need to look for the tool wear also. So what are the types of tool wear? What are the causes of tool wear? That we'll be discussing in detail. And last one is machinability. Again, just like grindability, machinability in the sense how easily you can machine that material. That property decides the machinability of that material. The next one, we'll talk about the cutting tool material. What are the different cutting tool materials available out there and for which application or for which material, means if you are machining cast iron, which tool should be used? When you are machining steel, which tools should be used? Or when you are machining copper or brass, which tool should be used? That compatibility we need to see, and that you will come to know when you study this cutting tool materials. And last one is cutting fluids. As I said, the temperature generation will be there when you are going to carry out the machining process, and this temperature generation is not desirable in most of the cases. We need to have control on this temperature generation. That will be done with the help of cutting fluids. The cutting fluids are going to play few additional roles along with reduction in temperature that we'll discuss. Meeting is about to end. You are supposed to join with the another link is there for 11:20 session. So I'll quickly end this one and we'll connect with that one. Okay, let's wait for the 10 minutes and we'll begin at the. Okay, let's continue. So in the first part, we were discussing the curriculum. We are done with this unit number 3, and the unit number 4 is processing of powder metals. As I said earlier, in this powder metal processing, what we usually do, we take metal powders, we mix it with some binding material, we shape into desired dimensions and all, and then we'll heat it. That process is called as sintering. And once you have heated to that temperature, there will be bonding of those particles with each other and you will get the final shape. Now, once you have got the product, we need to go for some finishing operations as well, or because when you sinter the product, there would be some unnecessary projections on that object that we need to remove. So there would be some secondary finishing operations would be there. So it begins with, as it is metal powder processing, means you are using powder to get the product, but we should begin with the getting metal powder first, because metal powder is not available in nature like raw material, right? We need to get that powder, and what are the methods to create metal powders are to be studied also. So we'll start with the production of metal powders. There are methods are there, various methods are there that we'll discuss. Then some properties related to metal powders would be particle size, shape, their distribution, that we'll be discussing. Then blending of metal powders. Blending in the sense we need to mix that metal powders with some binding material to have the desired properties, and that process is called as blending. Then compaction of metal powders, that is shaping of that mixture into desired dimensions and all, that is called as compaction. Means getting that raw shape, the process is called as compaction. That we'll be talking about. The various processes of compaction will be also studied, that is isostatic pressing would be there, and few equipments used for that compaction, that also we need to study. Then the next stage is sintering, that is heating that raw shape to a certain temperature so that the binding material will melt and the metal powders will form bond together. That process is called as sintering, and this is the post sintering operations that we need to do. Then unit number 5 is going to deal with the ceramics and glasses. Actually, glass is also a kind of ceramic. Ceramics has got two major categories. First one is called as crystalline, another one is called as non-crystalline or amorphous. So if that crystal structure is missing from the ceramic, you will get the glass. So that you are going to study in unit number 5. Then it will begin with the shaping of ceramics. First we'll talk about ceramics, and then we'll talk about the glass processing. So first, ceramic processing, the techniques like casting, plastic forming, pressing, drying, firing, and then finishing operations. All the operations step by step, right from the beginning till the final operations, that is finishing ones, that we're talking about. Same thing would be there for glasses also. In case of glass, there are certain products, and for those products we need to go for that particular technique only. Means when you want to have a flat sheet, when you want to have that plate glass, or you want to have a tube, or like glass fiber, to have such a products, there are some dedicated processes, and that will we are going to discuss in details. Then uh, nowadays each one of us has got a smartphone, and to protect their screens, we go to market to ask the tempered glass, right? But being an engineer, we should know what is mean by that tempered glass, how it is being tempered. That techniques are called as techniques for strengthening and annealing of the glass. Tempering is the process that increases the strength of that glass, right? So similar to tempering, there are some additional techniques that we are going to study over here. The techniques for strengthening and annealing of the glass. Then we'll talk about the finishing operations and design considerations for the both. When you want to have any product with the help of ceramics or glass, and you are planning to use some equipment or process, what parameters we need to consider or taken into account. That parameters are nothing but the design considerations. Then last unit is processing of plastics or polymers. So it is similar to or most of the operations that are used in plastic processings are that belongs to metal forming processes. Like you can see here, extrusion is there, then injection molding is there, injection molding, blow molding, and all. These are the similar processes that we study in metals as well. But the equipment are going to be a little bit different because temperature range for plastic would be less compared to metals. So that we are going to talk in details. In addition, few more processes are there like rotational molding, thermoforming, transfer molding, casting, foam molding, cold forming, solid phase forming, and all. Okay, and last one is the processing of elastomers. Now we know that plastics has got three categories. The first one is called as thermoplastic, second one is called as thermoset, and third one is called as elastomer. That we'll discuss in the next slide. So we are going to talk about the processes for these individual materials. When you are dealing with thermoplastic, some processes are there. When you are dealing with thermoset, some processes are there. And when you are dealing with elastomers, there are different processes that we are going to talk. Now to refer the textbook for unit number 2 and 3, that is based on metal cutting, you can go with the book number 2. That is based on fundamentals of machining and machine tools. The author is Geoffrey Boothroyd. This is quite a good book, but you might find it hard to understand because that has been written a little bit in a complicated manner, but that is really good book. And the first one, Manufacturing Engineering and Technology, written by Sirop Kalpak Jain and Stephen Chimay. This book is actually means I have done post graduation in manufacturing, so we used to refer this book as a Bible of manufacturing. Let it be any manufacturing process, right from the material selection to quality check. Everything you can find it in this textbook, Manufacturing Engineering and Technology. So if you even refer this single textbook, that is more than enough. Okay, but additionally, it is good if you look for additional books, like the second one is specifically written for the metal cutting. So if you want to study that metal cutting in a better manner, you should go with the second book. Similarly, some reference books are also there. The Michael P. Grover's Fundamentals of Modern Manufacturing is there. Then this Material and Processes in Manufacturing is also there by Paul D. Carnot. These two are again general textbook, general books where you can find all the manufacturing processes. And just like this second book that is dealing with the metal cutting, this third reference book also deals with the metal cutting. Theory of Metal Cutting, written by M.C. Shaw, a small book but a really good one. So you can also take a look of this textbook also, Theory of Metal Cutting by M.C. Shaw. So these are the books that you can refer. I have PDF copy of this Manufacturing Engineering and Technology textbook that I can share with you. I'm not sure about this Boothroyd, then M.C. Shaw. No, Michael P. Grover might be there. Not sure, but I have this Kalpak Jain's copy. So I can share that one with you, but if you have a hard copy with you, that would be better, because that Kalpak Jain textbook is like a huge book, and that scrolling through that PDF might be little bit irritating. To avoid that one, you can go with the hard copy. Ample number of copies are available in our library also, so you can take advantage of that also. Okay. Yes, introduction. Actually, we are not going to begin with the unit number 1 directly. Before that, just like I show you one video that was discussing the various aspects of manufacturing engineering. Similarly, I'm going to begin with some introductory concepts that you are supposed to know before proceeding for the actual curriculum, and that would be helpful for the better understanding. So let's begin with the word manufacturing. What is mean by manufacturing, or how it came into existence? Manufacturing, if you split that word manufacture, you will get two words. It's combination of this manus and factus. That is a basically Latin word, and combination of those two gives us the things that is made by hand. We know that a few years before that lathe machine and milling and all those machineries was not there. Once that James Watt invented the steam engine, then that created the base for industrial revolution one, right? And thereafter the machineries came into existence. Before that, everything was made by hand. So the origin of this manufacture word is also something that is made by hand. Okay. Now, if you look at the history of this manufacturing, there are two major things that we need to think of. The first one is discovery of the materials. We know that development of human era we can split into material ages like stone age, then copper and bronze age, then steel age, then ceramic, and likewise, right? When people got to know about some material and that material dominated that era, and that was named against that material, right? Stone age and copper age and bronze age, right? So that way, when people discovered the material, that created a base for, that was important thing in this manufacturing industry. And second one is development of production system. Means I have got the material, but if I want to make some useful product out of that material, I need to have a system to convert that raw thing into useful product. And the system that we can use to have that conversion is nothing but the production system. So these two things we need to study in detail when you want to study a manufacturing. Okay. Now, technologically or technically, what is meant by manufacturing? So manufacturing is basically application of a process that could be physical or chemical. Okay. Manufacturing is application of a process. Let it be any kind of process. But what we are going to do with the help of that process? To alter the geometry, to alter the properties, or to alter the appearance of the product. Now, this is important thing that you need to remember. Manufacturing is not only taking an object as a raw in a raw form and get that converted into uh, useful product by adding material or removing material. That is not only the manufacturing. So manufacturing could be when you alter the geometry, means when you add the material or remove the material, when you alter the properties like heat treatment processes, hardening, tempering, normalizing, carburizing, all these processes that you know, right? Using those processes, you don't alter the geometry of object, but you alter the properties, and that processes are also called as manufacturing processes. Similarly, the next one is alteration of appearance. Suppose you have coated the material with some layer, let it be ceramic layer, glass layer, acrylic layer, or anything. When you coat the surface of an object to have better appearance, that process is also manufacturing. Coating may be there, Even if you simply paint that material, that painting is also a manufacturing process, because using those processes you are improving the appearance of the product. And if you are doing that one, that is also manufacturing. Okay, so whether you are altering the geometry, altering the properties, or altering the appearance in a better sense, all the processes involved are manufacturing processes. This is technically or technologically. If I want to look at the same thing economically, how it is going to change economically in the sense is, suppose, yeah, I have got this raw material, okay, and suppose this is a manufacturing system. I took this raw material, I sent it to this manufacturing system, and I converted that into some useful product. I have drawn a more simple one, but this is useful product, right? Suppose this is my product and this is a raw material. Now, if I say the usefulness of this raw material in its raw shape, some random shape, okay, how can I use this raw shape? Can I put it in some application directly? No. Hardly I can throw it at somebody's face, right? That the most out of it, most thing that you can do with it, right? If you are so angry with somebody, you can throw it at his face. But if you want to use it for some better application, you need to convert it into some useful shape, and that can be done by this manufacturing system. So manufacturing system or manufacturing process is also called as value addition process, because this raw material, whatever value it has got, when you convert that into some useful product, its value is obviously going to be increased by some multiple numbers, right? So economically, if you look at the manufacturing process, it is a value addition process. Okay. So from here, I have taken some material. This is manufacturing process. The things would be like machinery, tooling, power, labor, all these are the parts of that manufacturing system. And on the other end, I will get the product. And if I compare the usefulness of this raw material with the product, obviously its usefulness is going to be increased by a large extent. Okay, so that is the importance of manufacturing. Next, production system. Production system or types of production. The same diagram I have drawn again over here, but with little more details. This is the input, this is the product, and the whole things shown in the bracket are manufacturing or production system. So there would be some support system, there would be some quality control systems and actual manufacturing system, along with the assembly and some additional operations. They all will act together to convert this raw material into useful product. Okay, so this production system has got few types. I have shown 4 over here, but in some of the textbook, you will find this one as a batch production only. So there would be 3 types: job production, batch production, and mass production. I'll begin with the mass production. So mass production in the sense, whatever product you have around you right at the moment, let it be your mobile phone, your watch, your footwears, your clothes, your pen, if somebody is using computer, that computer also, all the things has been produced in this category, mass production. Now, what are the characteristics of mass production? The lot size is usually greater than 1 lakh. Means at least 1 lakh similar components to be manufactured. Then we can say that manufacturing system as a mass production. Now, when you are dealing with mass production, you need to have special purpose machinery, because this 1 lakh products are to be manufactured within shortest possible time. So I need to have large production rate, large production capacity, and to have that I need to go for the special purpose machinery. Not only special purpose machinery, I need to go for automated equipments also, that systems that are going to use to transfer material from one place to another. Okay, there was some internet issue that made me get disconnected from the meeting. Okay, let's continue. We were discussing this mass production. So, to have that or to achieve that production rate, we need to go for special purpose machines, automated equipments, and all, right? Then comes the batch production. So it would be not your like you are manufacturing a single product. There would be a batch. That batch could be from 10 to 100 components, or in some cases 100 to 5,000 also. So the maximum that could be 5,000 also. But if you compared with this 1 lakh, that is quite less, right? So if that is the quantity of production units, then that is called as a batch production. Now, in case of batch production, again, the quantity is not that enough, but still it is considerable. 100 to 5,000 is also a considerable quantity. So we need to go for advanced machinery, and sometimes with computer controlled machineries. But we need not to go for this special purpose of automated equipments, because that much production rate is not there. Okay. The next one is job shop production. Now quantity is less than 100, or in most of the cases quantity could be 1 also. Suppose I have manufactured one component that for somebody who placed order for that product, and in future that person never came to me for another order. So a situation could be like, once in a lifetime, you manufacture one component, and then you shift to the another component. So the situation could be like, there might not be a repetition of similar component again, or hardly there could be 100 similar components. After that, you need to go for the another component. So if such scenario is there where you need to have a maximum versatility, because one component you manufactured, if somebody places order for some another component, to cope up with that requirement, I need to have machines that can be have that versatility. So the machine should be general purpose, so that you throw anything at me, I'll get it done. That kind of scenario has to be there, and that can be attained only when you have general purpose machines. So you can do anything with those machines. The production rate is going to be very low, but versatility will be more. So the general purpose machines like lathe, milling, drilling, grinders, and similar machines would be there, but general purpose. We don't need to go for advanced machinery, and you don't need to even think of special purpose and automated machineries. Okay, what the difference between all those productions? Would like to hear from you. Anybody has got any query? Unmute and let me know. Or else I'll proceed to the next slide. Any doubt, any query? Even you can put it in the chat window. I need a quick confirmation so that I can proceed to the next slide. Okay, let's continue. Production layouts. Now we need to combine these types of production: job shop, batch production, and mass production with these layouts. There are again three major layouts. The first one is fixed position, second process, and third one is product layout. This cellular layout in textbook you might find it, or uh, it might be missing from a few textbook, because some consider that one as individual layout, or simply consider that a part of product layout only. So the major types are fixed position, process layout, and product layout. The first one is the fixed position layout. Fixed position layout in the sense the equipment that is being manufactured or product. This is our product, which is a plane, a jet plane, right? You are going to manufacture this product that cannot be moved here and there, okay? And similar operations are going to be there repeatedly, so everything will be fixed at its position, and such a layout is called as fixed position layout. Second one is a process layout. Process layout in the sense, object, suppose at this machine 1 you perform one operation, let's say facing. Second operation you will throw it to somebody else that will be dealing with, suppose, threading operations. Then it will go to second person. Suppose this is machining shop, I want to send it to paint shop, then it will go to paint shop also. If I want to send it to any other shop like quality control shop, then it will go to another shop. In this way the object or the product keeps moving from one person to another, one shop to another. Okay, so such a layout is called as process layout. So it could be moving from here and there. And the last one is product layout. Product layout shown over here. So in case of product layout, what we do, we arrange machines in such a way that we follow the sequence of operations. Means if you have done facing, next you want to go for turning, the machines will be arranged in such a way that the product will enter from one side and it will be operated on different machines in a sequential manner, and on the other side you will get the finished product. Such a layout is called as product layout, because arrangement will be done in a favor of product. Whatever the operations are required to be done, things will be arranged accordingly. Now if I want to compare it with mass production, batch production, and job production, which layout should be used? Suppose this is A, this is B, and this is C. Mass production, batch production, and job production. You need to answer mass A, B, or C. Batch A, B, or C. Job A, B, or C. You can put it in a chat window. Chaitanya, I'll come to your query very soon. Before that, just answer the question. Mass production should be system A, system B, or system C. Batch production, system A, B, C, same thing with the job production, which should be used. You can unmute and talk, or you can put it in chat window also. We have got only 4 minutes in our hand, so you need to hurry up. Anybody is going to answer, or should I move to the next slide? Okay. So that is going to be your homework now. I'm not going to spend time on that one. Next, classification of engineering materials. There are four major categories. The first is called as metals. Actually, three are there: metals, ceramics, and polymers. Metals will have additional two categories: ferrous and non-ferrous. Ferrous in the sense, if iron is there in the metal, that would be called as ferrous, like cast iron and all the forms of steels are the ferrous metals. And except that, copper is there, brass, silver, gold, all other metals are called as non-ferrous. Ceramics, as I said earlier, crystalline and non-crystalline. Non-crystalline are directly called as glasses. Polymers, thermoplastic, thermoset, and elastomers. Thermoplastic in the sense, if you have got one product from that plastic and if you want to recycle it, if you heat it, it will become soft, and if you cool it, it will become hard. And if you can repeat that cycle, the material is thermoplastic. And if you cannot repeat the cycle, it is thermoset. Once you have manufactured product from the raw material, it is done. You cannot recycle it in a same efficiency that you can do with the thermoplastic. So that material is thermoset. And elastomer is the plastic that has elasticity or elastic in nature. This thermoplastic and thermoset are rigid. And if it is not rigid, it is flexible one, that is called as elastomer. Now, you might come across a situation where metal is not enough, ceramic is also not enough, polymer is also not enough. Means if you want to have an application where the material is supposed to have strength as well as it should not get affected by chemicals. We know that ceramics are chemically inert, but you cannot expose those ceramics to loading other than compressive. Compressive loading, ceramics are best, but other loading, ceramics are not going to work. For that, we need to go for metal. So for such a scenario, we need to combine these materials together, either metal plus ceramic, ceramic plus polymer, or any of the combination. And if you combine these materials together, you will get the composite. Now to get that composite, out of these metal, ceramic and polymers, one material is going to be considered as matrix and another material is going to be considered as reinforcement. Now to get the difference between this matrix and reinforcement, I will tell you the example of this slab that you have over your head. The metal bars, the slab is going to have two major components. First one is metal bars, and then another is that mortar, that is combination of that sand, cement and all. So the metal bars are nothing but the reinforcement, and that mortar is nothing but the matrix. Okay. Now, if this matrix is metal, it will be called as metal matrix composite. If that matrix is ceramic, it will be ceramic matrix composite. And if it is polymer, that will be called as polymer matrix composite. Okay. Meeting is about to end. So I better stop here. We'll discuss the manufacturing processes in the next session. Till then, if you have any doubt, any query, you can utilize this time. I'll take your questions if you have any. Even if you have any suggestion, let me know.